Hey, good morning. This is day 4 of the 5-day Campcraft advanced survival class. Slept great last night. Finally got the my sleep system was good before. The mat was all tuned up nice. It was kind of matted down a little bit, so I kind of had to refluff it, re-engineer it a little bit, but that worked out great. I got my fire arrangement all set. I went to a little bit wider bed, and I was able to burn some of those larger logs that I was trying to split, some of the smaller of the larger logs. So I figured out a pattern to do that. I've been taking logs about this size, making an X with them, and stacking the large log up on top, and it takes it a while to burn. I think I burned 2 last night, and I've got a big chunk of one still left. So it takes quite a bit to ignite. Usually a couple burn down, so although those X logs will burn all the way down to nothing, I'll lift the big log out of the way, rebuild the fire, stack it down again. But when it burns hot, and it takes a long time. So I was able to sleep for longer periods last night. Had some good REM sleep. It was good. Getting more comfortable in the woods now. Everything's starting to slow down a little bit now that the hectic pace of the deliverables seem like they're all done. So that's when I started to notice how nasty dirty I am. I ended up in the middle of the night, well, whatever, it was dark. In between fire exchanges, I had a real good blaze going. So I utilized that opportunity to go down and get some water, heat it up, and I washed myself off best I could. Took my t-shirt off basically, and that was my clean bandana that I used to wash myself. And it felt better. It's not the best in the world, but it felt a lot better. And just the fact that I'm noticing things like that, showing that, again, that I'm out of that I'm going to freeze to death, I'm going to die out here mode. Now I'm just living out here. Hunger, is not as actually bad as I thought it would be. My stomach's growling from time to time. I've had just nibblings. I had a worm and a little frog, and I've had onions for 2 days now. A little bit of onions, maybe a handful bunch of onions. And I'm kind of more surprised at the energy drop, actually. I've always heard you can go 3 weeks without food, but in reality, it's a bad 3 weeks. It's not, as your body's using your fat reserves, apparently it's not a 1-to-1 ratio, because my energy level just is dropped, and it's getting worse, I can tell. If I was going to do this in a longer term situation, I was thinking about this before, we went tool heavy. So they gave us a knife, an axe, a saw, and a multi-tool. Dave Canterbury's got that 5-tool rule, which is axe, saw, knife, awl, and carving tool. So our awl technically was covered by the multi-tool, not so much. I would have liked to have a good awl when I was working on that sling, that shepherd sling, and a carving tool would help me at load on working on this bow. But realistically, if you increase that to 6 tools and throw the multi-tool in, because you see all the junk that people are able to find here. There's trash piles everywhere. There's garbage everywhere. Nothing goes to waste out here. I mean, I saw that glove, I picked it up. I had no idea what I was going to do with it. I actually was going to make it into an axe mask, but I found mine. So anything I see, if I don't take it with me, I at least categorize where it is. So I think the original 5 tools, if you throw a multi-tool in there just to work with non-organic materials, I think that's kind of a key thing. I haven't really used my Leatherman for tending the fire as far as using the pliers or anything. I was just using a toggle and a string like I showed you. But anyway, like I was saying, we went tool heavy here. To live out here and to not be flipping over rocks looking for frogs and trying to eat grubs, you need to go tool heavy as far as something to hunt with. You know, the shepherd sling and a primitive bow and whatever kind of arrow I can craft out here. That's a good backup plan, I guess. Say I had a shotgun with 10 rounds. I would be making a bow in anticipation of running out of that ammo. Also traps, so I would say definitely have a firearm. This morning I'm laying in bed and I'm watching 3 squirrels playing around within shotgun range of me. You know, that's hard to do when you haven't ate, and boy, those things would be tasty right now. I walked over closer to the road where they dropped me off, and I saw a total of 8 squirrels this morning. One of them was actually, there was a small gray squirrel had its back to me going up the road, and I was going to give a Hail Mary shot with my shepherd sling, and believe it or not, before I loaded it and started twirling a big rock around my head, the squirrel decided to run off. I don't know why it would find that threatening at all. But firearm, shotgun, I would have had 8 squirrels. I would have had 8 squirrels today. And man, and that would just be incredible. That would just be off the charts. I do have modern snares. That's great. That's wonderful. I screwed up by not bringing in more snares. I was lucky that Mike loaned me 6 of his. My whole hang-up was I didn't bring hog snares. I didn't have hog snares. We don't have wild hogs in my area. Even the trapping shop didn't have the proper size wire or locks, or I would have built my own. Cable, not wire, actually. But I should have just brought the biggest I had, brought my Cody snares, and just set them for, set every raccoon den up and down this creek. That's what I should have done. Snares are great. I would prefer conibears. I showed you that log set that would have been perfect for 1 or 2 conibears. All these squirrels also. A squirrel pole with wire would be good. If I had some like 24 gauge trapping wire. But a conibear would be a hell of a lot better. If I could put a 110 or a couple 110s on a squirrel pole, I'd be booming then. There are no fish here to speak of, not that I'm aware of. But if I have a kit and I've got a shotgun and I've got ammo and snares and traps, I would also like to have fishing gear. And I did a review before on the yo-yos. Those are awesome. I don't have to be standing there by a creek casting a hobo fishing reel over and over again, or a Cuban yo-yo. The yo-yo mechanical fishing reels, they're great, and the speed hooks are awesome. So one of those two, or both, nothing weighs much compared to your gun or your axe or your multi-tool. If you're talking a couple speed hooks, a couple yo-yos, it's just in an area with fish, it's guaranteed. Now, colder weather like this, their activity is going to be lower. That's going to affect things, but at least you can try. And if you were ever truly in a situation, you don't know that it's going to be December. So you kind of need a well-rounded kit that you can adapt. So all the foods around here, I've had geese flying over me, so a shotgun would be awesome. I'd settle for a rifle. I would take a handgun. It wouldn't be my preference. So shotgun, rifle, handgun would be last of my options. Conibears would be first. I like snares also. And then, a good selection of fishing gear, passive fishing gear, and fishing line, and just spare hooks. And that's a pretty solid kit. It wouldn't take up much space. I think I'm going to build up something similar, minus the firearm, into a small package, and see how compact I can get it, see how much it weighs. But it would be definitely something, if I was in a situation, say I was just out four-wheeling, and my Jeep breaks down, and I'm doing this kind of stuff, just waiting for rescue, which is basically what I'm doing now. I'm not trying to self-rescue. I am just here. I'm just here waiting right now. But to have that little bit of augmentation in my Jeep in the back, you know, wouldn't weigh much, wouldn't take up much space. Man, I would really be smoothing it right now. I mean, as far as camping goes, I have the camp skills now. You know, I didn't always have that, but I'm camping comfortably out of a haversack and a bedroll. You know, Jason gave us that wool blanket. That's awesome. My bedroll would have a tarp and then a blanket and a quick change of clothes, or at least extra socks. Excuse me. And then a hammock doesn't take up a lot of space. Then if you've got that, you're camping. You know, so this is just improvised stuff. This is without the bedroll, essentially. Haversack camping. Jason gave us the blankets because he didn't want student sickles out here all over the place, because it has been cold. I didn't burn that many of the cedar logs I cut. These are my smalls right here. That's like an emergency flare-up if I need it. And then to my left and my right, I've got, you know, forearm size cedar poles. This is, I drug all my embers and my coals and that big unburnt log to the top. Basically, that's a flat spot that I dug into the side of the hill with a digging stick. Originally, that was where my fire lay was. It was too far from my shelter, so I drug it down to right where the rocks are. Now that's really tight. That's pretty close. If anything pops, any sparks were popping, you know, they were getting into my debris bed, which is basically a giant bird's nest. You know, it's all dried grasses. So to counteract that, I drug the fire away as far as I can get it, and then I laid my wool blanket out to try to suppress any flames. Now this is going to need constant attention from me today, as far as keeping it going and keeping it in control. So I'm all geared up. I got the fire stoked. I'm going to walk up the river or up the creek again and check my snares. Now this is going to be the last time I'm going to check them. Anything my intended targets, okay, is mostly nocturnal. And this is the last. Class is over tomorrow. So at some point tomorrow, you know, we will we'll complete the class. And I'm really not interested in processing, you know, a big 20-pound coon as I'm scrambling, trying to, you know, get everything cleaned up and get out of here. So it's now or never as far as these snares are going. But it was a good try. You know, I got them set on all positive spots. I like my options, and at least I'm trying to procure real food, not, you know, like I said before, not things that I use for bait to catch real food. There's plenty of game around here. It's just I mean, this is a survival situation. It's a mock survival situation. That's what this class is. You know, you're pushed and you are with limited gear, and it is supposed to be difficult. And brother, it is difficult. You really got to put up with a bunch of crap to get through this class. And when you're hungry and you've got, you know, I've got coon sign all over the place. I've got squirrels. I've got geese flying around me. You know, that's normal food, and it's right there. I'm just not equipped for it right now. So that's a lesson to be learned. And at this point, you know, my stomach ain't gonna die from not eating another day. So I've still got onions in reserve. I got busy yesterday working at a bow. I didn't get to eat that delicious worm that I promised you. So I'll see if I can find one of those. But hopefully I just catch a big coon and we'll just forget all about that damn worm. I already ate one off camera, and it really is not worth repeating. So let's go check the snares. So here's that snare where I used to improvise the whammy. So I just wanted to try it out. I tried it a couple times as I was making it, but you never know that last set. So the object is, for that thing to come out, the only thing that moves is the lock. And it's starting to give a little bit, but you know, that closed up enough where, you know, the animal's not getting out. Like I said, a neck catch is pretty rare. I usually get them around the body. And then I had to marry these two together to anchor to a tree root. But this is the whammy right here. This is. They also have like a clear tube. This one's a spring steel, like what's inside of a lock nut for wiring. So basically, you would have a piece of trapping wire that's, you know, a little stiffer than like a 14 gauge, like a number 9 gauge, and you would bend it, maybe an 11 gauge, I don't remember. But anyway, you would bend it to whatever your height is that you want it, and then you twist this on, and it locks itself to that wire. And then this is the lock. This is like a washer type lock. There's better locks out there. And then this is called a deer stop right here. This is so this snare never gets smaller than a deer's foot. So a deer will always be able to pull his foot out of there. But you set that whammy on your wire, and then that lets you adjust the snare height just by bending the wire. You know, doing it like I was, adjusting like I was, you're hoping, you know, it's less than ideal. And again, you see the ovality of the snare. This is a new snare, it hasn't been trained yet. They have to be, you want them as round as possible. So I freed that snare. The other end's a swivel. This is wishful thinking. These snares usually bind up pretty bad, but it's standard. You can make these just with a loop, just like this. Forego the swivel, but usually the cable, you lose, you know, the last little bit of cable anyway. Now these are rebuildable. You can cut this wire cable, and your lock never goes bad. You could carry extra deer stops, and then you just got to have these ends, and you can just smash that with a rock or your axe. But for a new snare, like I said, I work the snare back and forth, and what I do is I'm leaning the lock all different directions, just so that it's all deburred, so it's a faster snare. Okay, now say I want to catch about like that. That's like maybe a 6-inch snare. For coons, maybe about like that. Let's say we're going to go with this size. I'm just going to wrap the extra snare cable around. Just like that. Now that helps it hold its shape, and if you store it like this, then it's going to have the memory to be this size. You know, if you just take these and throw them in your pack, they're going to get all smashed to hell, and they're not going to be working properly. That don't mean you can't catch stuff, but this is how it's intended to be used, so this is how I generally try to use it. Also, these snares, I think these are like maybe these are a 4-foot snare, I'm not exactly sure, maybe 3 foot. I like them long. I like the snares a lot longer, because like I said, you're always going to lose any catch you make. You're always going to lose part of the cable, and the whole doesn't mean the whole snare shot. You know, if you've got a 7-foot cable and you got a coon twisting and tearing up your snare and biting on it, I might lose 3 feet. You know, I can cut it back, reuse my lock or the swivel, whichever end got busted, and then I just carry these, these ends that you just flatten out, and I keep those in my trap and my snare bag I've got at home. It's kind of almost like a rounded shaped bag. The bottom of it is rounded, so I keep all my snares, trapping wire, pair of pliers. Not a lot is required to run snares. It's all a blind set. Nothing's baited with these things, and it's unaffected by weather. In my place up north, we have snow a lot, not a lot more than down in Kentucky here. So I've had traps freeze up in the dirt. I've had spots where I couldn't dig into the ground to set a trap because it was so hard. So this lets me set weather free basically. So I can find a game trail, set my snare at whatever height I want, and it doesn't get any, it's unaffected by weather. And also, animals are used to having, sticks and weeds brush their face all the time. So if I had this snare set at the wrong height or the wrong diameter, a lot of times I'll see them brush to the side. Well, I know that I better counteract that. So my next move might be to go down 2 inches. And the next day it could be brushed to the side. And I'll go up. So I'll just troubleshoot it back and forth until I find the proper recipe. So it could be height, it could be diameter, or it could just be a deer just brushing it with its legs. And if that's the case, you're screwed, but you usually should see tracks. So you got tracks as some kind of indicator, and you can troubleshoot your way into game with this thing as long as you're seeing activity. So here's set number 3. No animals, so I'm out of luck again today. But key point here is I walked right past this one. Like I said, I have a snare bag set up, and one of those things I have is like an orange flagging tape. These snares are brand new. Usually you age them, so you would, I've soaked them in baking soda or boiled them in baking soda before and threw them outside, and I've just thrown them outside. I've heard people even spray paint them slightly, or they put like a coating on them from the factory, some of the bigger snare manufacturers. But all mine get like a dull gray, and it just blends in 100%. I mean, you can't see it. So unless you have a photographic memory, which nobody does after not eating for 4 days, it's best to flag it. So, I could have used a piece of my bandana, should have used a piece of my bandana. I only had 3 sets out. If I had a dozen or 2 dozen, there's no way in hell I'd be able to remember where all these are at. Another option, actually I tried this to make like a cairn, I think I'm pronouncing that right, like a stack of rocks to signify something. I think they do that in, I think it's Scotland, to signify trails or certain things, points of interest basically. I tried that here, and actually I'm looking at it now, but I didn't notice because there's so damn many rocks here. So that was ineffective. I also could have blazed the tree with my axe. So basically I would just skin the bark down in that one certain area so I have a nice white patch of inner bark showing. That's probably what I should have done. Push comes to shove, I always could have rewound the camera and found it that way. But I walked past it, came back thinking, where the hell's that other snare at? And I just found it. So always mark your snares, always mark your traps. The more you have, the harder it gets. The more fatigued you are, the harder it gets.